two viral clips where left-wing politicians, both in Spain and then also in France, have been kind of telling us that this thing that was once called the wildest conspiracy theory, the so-called Great Replacement, is actually their favorite political project.
Ojalá podamos barrer de fachas y de racistas este país con gente migrante, con gente trabajadora. Claro que yo quiero que haya reemplazo de fachas, reemplazo de racistas, reemplazo de vividores.
De la capacité de nos listes à incarner la nouvelle France, celle du grand remplacement, celle de la génération qui remplace l'autre parce que c'est comme ça depuis la nuit des temps et que c'est pas parce qu'il y a 10 dingues dans un coin qui tout d'un coup ont peur d'être remplacés par leurs enfants que nous devons partager leur peur.
This is something that is out there on the left side of the political spectrum since hundreds of years. They have replaced the concept of citizenship with a global concept.
Replacement migration has been a policy in a United Nations report in 2000. So they were already talking about replacement migration, arguing that because in the Western countries, northern Western countries, there's not enough babies that are born.
We have lost our defensive capabilities, and we lost our capability to basically even define what is a citizen, who is a citizen, and why we should defend our own citizens through this. And this is the real reason, not a weird conspiracy theory behind this, why this even comes up all the time.
So hello and welcome back to the MCC Brussels podcast. As ever, I'm Jacob Reynolds, host, and today we've got lots to discuss. We're going to be discussing the incredible rhetoric around the so-called Great Replacement by left-wing leaders in Europe. We're going to take a look at France, Europe, and the battle for some kind of strategic autonomy, as it were, between Europe and America. And we're also going to take a look at the increasing round of bans, raids, and everything with regard to social media and especially X. Joining us this week on the podcast, really delighted to go a special guest, Angéline Furet, MEP with the Patriots for Europe group representing Rassemblement. Welcome.
Thank you.
And joining us again, our colleague Richard Schenk.
Certainly not a boring week.
Yeah, loads and loads going on. So, but first, there's two absolutely viral clips that we'll show. But two viral clips where left-wing politicians, both in Spain and then also in France, have been kind of telling us that this thing that was once called the wildest conspiracy theory, the so-called Great Replacement, is actually their favorite political project. So our two left-wing leaders proudly saying that we need to replace the old racist voters of our country with new immigrants. This coming in the context of massive amnesty of illegal immigrants in Spain and pushes around the bloc around Europe and the European Union for similar measures.
Ojalá podamos barrer de fachas y de racistas este país con gente migrante, con gente trabajadora. Claro que yo quiero que haya reemplazo de fachas, reemplazo de racistas, reemplazo de vividores.
De la capacité de nos listes à incarner la nouvelle France, celle du grand remplacement, celle de la génération qui remplace l'autre parce que c'est comme ça depuis la nuit des temps et que c'est pas parce qu'il y a 10 dingues dans un coin qui tout d'un coup ont peur d'être remplacés par leurs enfants que nous devons partager leur peur.
Angéline, what was your reaction to these two speeches where it seemed that, as I say, this conspiracy theory is now their actual favorite project?
Right. I would like to say that some conspiracy theory are real conspiracy theory, like we'll be invaded by aliens tomorrow morning. But some are just things that are out in public because replacement migration has been a policy in a UNO, United Nations report in 2000. So they were already talking about replacement migration, arguing that because in the Western countries, northern Western countries, there's not enough babies that are born. So the solution, instead of putting in place a family policy, a natality policy, a birth policy, would be to replace this lack of newborns by migration.
Yeah, and Richard, I'm interested in your reaction to this because it seemed that there was this kind of concerted push by both these politicians in France and in Spain to basically say that they don't really like the voters who live in their country at the moment, and they prefer to have kind of different people, better voters living from elsewhere.
So if you look back, this is something that is all out there on the left side of the political spectrum since hundreds of years. It was in the 18th century when Jean-Jacques Rousseau said that he wants to replace the corrupted institutions with some bons sauvages, the noble Weidman, who are untainted by bourgeois capitalist values and so on. And then you can just go on through the history of philosophy on the left side of the political spectrum. So like Derrida or Michel Foucault, they have deconstructed the nation state and ethnicity. Or to move to the US, Nancy Fraser nowadays, basically they have replaced the concept of citizenship with a global concept. You can go on with a lot of different examples. And what they wanted to achieve and what they have achieved to large degrees, that are elites who are basically listening to these theories at university, and it trickled down into the everyday culture. Then this cultural basically defense, we have lost our defensive capabilities, and we lost our capability to basically even define what is a citizen, who is a citizen, and why we should defend our own citizens through this. And this is the real reason, not a weird conspiracy theory behind this, why this even comes up all the time.
Yeah, and Angéline, I mean, in France, it was Jean-Luc Mélenchon who was making these comments, always a man for something kind of crazy soundbite. But in this case, it's kind of like a active strategy of the new left. The old voters that they used to represent, working class voters, ordinary people, they're not that into it anymore. They think are a bit racist, a bit backwards, and they instead they're looking for a different social base for their votes.
Yeah, exactly. Jean-Luc, never forget, Jean-Luc is a Trotskyist to start with. So he's been trained as an extreme far left communist. And he has decided a few years ago, not the previous presidential election, but the one before, instead of defending the workers, and that would have been saying that immigration might be a problem, especially working migration, to bring workers in our country to work for cheaper. He decided to switch to what we call creolisation. I don't know how to say it in English, but it's like communautarism, defend that the nation is not a unity anymore. It's not people who share same values and the will to live together, but just different communities like you can find in the Anglo-Saxon countries, you can find in UK or in the United States. So you have the Pakistanis, you have the Chinese, you have the French, you have the Italians, and they all live in communities. So Jean-Luc Mélenchon went into that, and he also went further because he decided that the future of migration is not anymore, let's say, the neighborhood migration from Poland, from European countries, but the future is from Arabic and African countries. So he's really pro-African and Arabic migration. So that's his new way of doing politics. I do think it has something to do with electoral goals, but not only. I do think there is some ideology behind also.
And Richard, it's important to steer a line here because while there are certainly people on the left, like we've said, who see migrants as a new voting bloc and are maybe even slightly ashamed of how backwards their country might be, and so that it needs to be updated or refreshed with new people from new places. Some people interpret this whole phenomenon as part of a grand conspiracy behind the closed doors. What's your take on this, like the great replacement, as it were? What's your take on this so-called theory?
This is as usually, if you have such a theory that's trying to explain everything, you should be a bit more aware of it, because if there would be some kind of central planning behind it, it would be actually much easier to politically fight back on this. But what we see instead is a very decentralized approach. So you can see the same development happening in New Zealand as in France or in Germany and US and so on. And this is what we've spoke about, that it's much more diffuse. diffuse ideas that are spreading through across the global elites, because they are international, while their constituencies, their nations remain within national boundaries. So they consume, in many cases, they consume the same media, they speak the same language, and so on and so on. This is how these ideas became kind of global. This is why we spoke about anywheres who are sharing the same values. While the somewheres, people who belong to a nation, who have a national identity, which is the majority at least in Europe, or the ordinary people, they are not sharing the same values. And this is why we have this continuous battle of values between the elites and the ordinary people that is so defining of the current age across the world.
Next up this week, wanted to take advantage of the fact that we've got Angéline with us to talk about one of these big developments in Europe, and especially on the European right. And in the debacle that we talked about in previous episodes of the podcast with regards to Trump and Greenland, it was politicians from your party, Angéline, who came out very forthrightly in defense of the concept of sovereignty with regards to Greenland, and were very clear in saying that whatever we might agree with Donald Trump, there is things that we have to kind of hold the line on. And so I wanted your thoughts on how best Europe should respond to this difficult moment where America, the USA, very much more assertive in terms of its national interests, and how do we reclaim in Europe a sense of our own national interests as well?
Right. The question's a bit tricky for me, because for me, Europe's not a country. So Europe has no sovereignty and can't fight back. It's a confederation of states, of sovereign states, and Greenland should defend itself. It's kind of special also because you said, even if we agree with Trump, as a French politician, as a European map, I don't agree with Trump. What I do agree is that he is doing what he has to do for the best of his country. And it's what we expect from our politicians and from our politics. And Europe is not doing that. So for the first time, we realize that a country is trying to put a hold on what we consider as our ring of influence / Greenland for the United States. And we're like, oh, no, we have to defend sovereignty. Of course we do. And we have to support the countries that want to defend their sovereignty. But I do think it's Greenland problem. It's not Europe problem. And other countries as partners can give their support, help, try to negotiate or go through diplomacy, what we don't have anymore in France, thanks to our President Macron. But yes, it's like when one country tries to invade another one, and that's it. And of course, we're against that.
Yeah, and Richard, this is an important point because it's clear in lots of the EU leaders that they would like to use this concept of European sovereignty, when I agree with Angéline, doesn't exist. But they would like to use this as a kind of a bolster, support for their own political project, which doesn't really pay much attention to nations of Europe, but is about the federation, the kind of superstate of the EU.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this cry for a European army and European military is as old as the European Union itself. Since the Second World War, it pops up basically every month in a different shape. There are very good reasons why there still is not even something like close to European army, because the European states have vastly different strategical problems. So France for example, has nuclear weapons. So the French military is built up completely differently than the German one next door to it. So, and you can just go on and go on. So the German law is different from Polish one, and because everybody has different priorities. Than the eastern flank of this, Russia is completely different than for Portugal. Yeah, and the historical traditions and so on. And it would be very, very strange to make the smallest common denominator as the balance for new European sovereignty. So what would that be? That we station everywhere a bit of a European army? That's not strategic sovereignty either. What's left are kind of like PR stunts by individual member states. So, for example, the German Navy once sent, like some years ago, they've sent a single naval battleship, a frigate, to the Straits of Taiwan, which is basically enough to make the Chinese a bit angry. But in a case of a serious war between Taiwan and China, it wouldn't do anything. Just it would require American rescue. And so this is like, basically they were chiming into this old narrative of the Boxer Rebellion, that we can just send some battleships to China to intimidate them. But these times are long gone. I mean, they need to develop a genuine new policy.
Yeah, and Angéline, we've had lots of talk of the dependency that exists in Europe on America. What's the mood, do you think, in France or in your party about how we begin to deal with this dependency?
Right. How we begin to deal with it. We don't begin at all. We just dig the hole deeper, and we are dependent in all the fields we could be dependent. I mean, energy. We had energy mainly from Russia. So with the war in Ukraine, we decided not to have this gas anymore. So we buy it in America and in India. So we're still dependent. We have dependency on drugs, for your health, for the healthcare. And we've seen that during the COVID period, where we had shortage of some vital drugs for people. We are dependent on industry. We have no more industry because we wanted it all green. So, and we were in this ideology of the global village, while I do think it was in the last Davos meeting that an American politician just said, we know that the global village can't work because you put your own people out of work to go somewhere, make more profit. But then you became dependent. You have no more industry. We are dependent on our food now. So if a country you don't agree with, or you have different interests, what is real life and real politics is angry against you, they can say just, okay, you'll starve because you can't grow your food. So that's the Mercosur. So it's like if, the DNA of the Europe was to make us dependent and weak. So that's just completely crazy for me. And I do think the big twist that has to take place is to go back to power, because to be peaceful, and we all want peace, and we don't want to go in Ukraine to fight against Russia. Mm-hmm. To be peaceful, you have to be strong. So first, let's go back to independence.
Yeah, and Richard, one of the key building blocks, and we see it also in the, if you like, the arms race around artificial intelligence, is very much energy. And this is one of the areas where Europe's really lacking, not just the gas situation, but also, of course, the kind of war on nuclear energy as well.
Yeah, nuclear energy, but also if you look at geothermal, so like there would be some cheap solutions to provide AI centers with energy. But I always look at Instagram with some of my former colleagues and students from university, and they on the environmental side of the political spectrum, we can now see that AI is something very, very bad for the environment. So you shouldn't use AI or not even do a Google search because it consumes so much energy. So, and I mean, if you have you can think about AI what you want, but it's not about AI regulation, just about pure environment, because the ideology applied to AI, that's not going to lead anywhere. I mean, everybody else is going to use AI. I mean, the Chinese have access to energy, the Indians have access to energy, and you can go on. Not to speak of the US. And if we have this, and then I listened a week ago here in Brussels to a EU Commission official, when he said, oh yeah, if we continue with the Green Deal, like 2035 on, we have to change the way how we do economy, because but a strange phrase. So he basically said that our economy growth is over and getting decline, and this applied to AI as well. It's insane.
Finally, this week, I mean, it's been a really busy few days in terms of news around restrictions on the internet. So first instance, which I'm really interested in your thoughts, Angéline, we've got French police announcing a raid in connection with the Digital Services Act in France. We've had news from America about a series of revelations with regards to how the EU has been censoring information, not just in Europe, but affecting America as well. And we've also got renewed calls from, it seems, every different country to ban young people from the internet. So there's a huge range of different things going on. But firstly, Angéline, this raid of X in France, what do you make of it?
Right. What do I make of it? I would say it's soft censorship, because it's not saying exactly what you can do or you can't do. It just make more visible what is allowed by the government, the power in place, and what is not allowed. So it's a way to ban you, but it's kind of a soft way, and it's very tricky also, because you can't say what you want, but it won't be seen or it won't be heard. So I do think that it shouldn't be. There is a clear difference between what is illegal and what has not to be on the medias and on the social medias. What is criminal, what is a delict or a crime, and an opinion that is a different opinion than the mainstream. And those opinions shouldn't be controlled, according to me.
Yeah, and Richard, we had these revelations from America, like a really detailed, so far, release of files that they got hold of from American tech firms regarding the degree of influence the EU was placing on some of these firms to censor what we could and couldn't see online.
It's hard to overestimate the significance of this new push from across the USA to basically lay open to the European public how the European Commission wanted and already began interfering with elections, with the public opinion in certain member states. And it's a shame that we need the Americans for this to do that. And the reason for this is that all the normal rules, democratic rules, do not apply to all these censorship instruments we have here in Europe. So, for example, the European Union has a pretty good transparency regulation. And as we found out, as we wanted to access documents on the DSA application in certain member states, we have found out that the European Union says, no, the transparency regulation applies to everything except the DSA. This was the legal reasoning behind it. So the European public is basically shut out of investigating any documents that have to do in the EU with the Digital Services Act, while obviously the American administration has other means than an ordinary citizen. So we have to rely from some help from the US. That this is a completely politically surreal situation. But nevertheless, we have to use this opportunity to lay open the censorship machinery that the EU wants to create.
Yeah, well, we've had plenty of reports on this, so our viewers can check out the MCC Brussels website. We've got loads of stuff on how the EU's been censoring speech, especially online. But Angéline, the other thing I'm interested in, that at the same time as all of these pushes to clamp down on social media for adults, there's also something of a panic around children. So in France, Macron has pledged to accelerate a ban on social media for minors. There's similar moves afoot in the UK, Denmark as well. The Netherlands is calling for an EU-wide ban on minors using social media. Is this a moral panic, or are there genuine concerns about young people online?
Neither one or the other. It's a European will and policy to... So it's not a policy that has to be followed, but they advise the countries that they should put in place this control for children between the European Union said 60. So the France has decided 15, but maybe it's different in Denmark or Spain, also Greece. So they're all going to do what the EU say because they're good EU soldiers. The thing is that behind this kind of a goodwill to protect our poor kids, first, they are the state is taking away the power to educate your own kids from the parents. And I do think that it's the family and the parents' responsibility and freedom to educate your kids. Maybe you will decide that it's 17 because one of your kids is a bit more delicate or more sensitive, and the other one who needs to explore more, you'll say, okay, you're 14, go for it. So that's your parent responsibility. And once the state starts to educate your kids, decide what you can hear or what you can see on medias, it starts to sounds like a totalitarian state or a system. And that's what really is a problem for me. Moreover, behind that, you also have the how you call it in English, numerical identity,
ID card.
EID, electronical ID.
Yeah.
And you have also the electronic currency.
Yeah.
So it's all this new structure that will control the citizen through an ID wallet. So you will have an electronic wallet that will contain all your data. You will have certain access that you can or cannot have. And they always start, what I've noticed with the EU, they always start with it is to protect you.
So to protect children.
Yeah, it's to protect your children against the horrible social media. So we will help you because you can't do it and you're asking for it. And once you started this, then they will control also the adult, because how to know that somebody is minor or major if you don't control everybody? And then it will be a control society. And this is what we don't want. We believe in freedom and liberty.
Yeah, very good. I think people often forget that if you ban young people from social media, that means adults have to prove who they are when they want to go online. That's the only way to make a ban work, and it turns the internet from potentially anonymous to definitely not anonymous. But Richard, what's your take on these bans for young people in social media?
As you said, there are many ways of soft ID mechanisms that you age verifications. I remember in 2019 during the EU election campaign, there was widespread protests in Germany because the EU wanted to expand the copyright laws to a degree where everybody was worried about upload filters. And obviously this was brushed aside as some right-wing protest, whatever. Actually, most of the people who were at the protest voted for the Greens later on, nevertheless. Then some years ago, a study came out that indeed this led to a scientific study, peer-reviewed in a journal. It came out and said that indeed it led to a significant decrease on the variety online. And then first you read with copyright, then you read with age verification, then there is some hate speech laws, then there is disinformation, then Russian, and this package together basically narrows down the allowed public opinions in public to a significant degree, and you can steer this corridor of opinion, of allowed opinions, on the long run. And this is what the EU wants to achieve. This is what they call defense of democracy package, or now it's a democracy shield. And this combination of measures added together is a very dangerous one.
Yeah, it's no surprise, and we can see with some irony that we've had conversations on the podcast before about young people, lots of young people turning to patriotic right-wing parties, and at the same time, this is going on now on to ban young people from accessing information online. So to me, it's quite an authoritarian move. But as ever, we're interested in your views, our viewers. What do you think on any of the issues that we've discussed? What would you like us to cover in the future? Your comments and support really do make this podcast worth doing, and also help us reach a wide audience with our slightly alternative take on EU politics. But for now, that's it for us from the MCC Brussels podcast. Thank you so much, Angéline.
Thanks to you.
And Richard, thanks for joining us again.
It was a pleasure.
We'll see you at the same time next week.